when it coats the outside of the cell, it becomes that sticky, gluey, candy-like coating we call glycation. Now, there's an important term for the material that coats the outside of the cell. And I'm not treating like a kindergarten. I really want you to hear this word because you're going to hear it more and more in the news. It is actually called advanced glycation end products. And ironically, the acronym for this lengthy name is AGES, A-G-E-S, Advanced Glycation End Products. If you look up that term in the National Library of Medicine database, currently there are more than 8,000 studies listed about this. That's how much interest there is in the science of controlling aging and the science of what we're discussing.
Well, Barbara, this is fascinating, and even though I asked you to describe this in a kindergarten way, that was really for my benefit because I know that we have some very serious healthcare providers that are listening, with all due respect to them, and people that are, highly educated when it comes to health, period. If glycating is so bad, then this is a new topic that people are getting more and more familiar with. How do we stop it? What do we do?
Okay, well, we're all going to glycate. It is impossible to 100% stop glycation process, but you can control it, and you can avoid a huge amount of glycation by choosing to eat foods that are lower in the glycemic index, low glycemic carbohydrates. They will cause the glucose to enter your body much more slowly, allowing glucose to get into the cell without depositing so much of that sticky, gluey stuff on the outside of the cell. Foods like thin-skinned fruits like apples and pears and peaches and plums and berries and leafy vegetables, or those vegetables that are grown above ground, they will break down into glucose, but just much more slowly. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes. And, what's interesting when you are talking about glycemic carbohydrates, low glycemic carbohydrates, let's say, there is this term called the glycemic index. And as I've been traveling around and working with people from various backgrounds in healthcare, the glycemic index, just that term alone, I have learned amongst the population, it's kind of confusing to people, and thought maybe you can elaborate on that for a moment.
Okay. There's an international listing of the glycemic index of food, the speed at which carbohydrates are going to enter your body. And it's very interesting. This was originally created by a team of researchers in Sydney, Australia, led by a woman. Her name is Jenny Brand Miller. They spent years testing carbohydrates. What they did is they hired a group of men and put them up in dormitories, and they spent years waking them up in the morning and feeding a single carbohydrate food to this group of subjects each morning on an empty stomach. You can imagine, you're given, let's say, a bowl of rice first thing in the morning, and then they would draw your blood before. They'd give you that bowl of rice, and then they would draw your blood again, and they check your glucose levels afterwards to see how quickly that glucose level would rise. Then they gave each food a numerical rating from 1 to 100. Based on their data, they found that carbohydrates higher in fiber will enter the bloodstream more slowly.